about anybody else with some favourite recipes or recipes you recommend?
Well, I tend to choose Turkish recipes or Mediterranean style recipes because they have more flavour, to be honest with you, than English recipes. So I try and choose stuff. So I have quite a collection of Turkish recipes. I mean, I like things like Imam Bialdi and stuff like that. So because it's just lots of vegetables, but lots of flavours. So they use more cumin and more warm flavors and spices to their cooking. So I have a tendency to choose recipes like that to make things like beans, especially because we had an awful lot of beans. We grow Bolotti beans, and I do like using Mediterranean spice palette through my Bolotti beans. So so I mean I have got various recipes. I have I mean I can recommend is mostly there's this one which is absolutely brilliant, which if you get a chance to, it's called New Feast, and it's modern Middle Eastern vegetarian, and it is vegetarian, but it's modern Middle Eastern, and it has got some amazing recipes. And what's great is with Middle Eastern vegetables, they are actually vegetables which actually grow on our allotments as well. So it's not so, something, I mean, people can grow obscure things, but like tomato and bean with harissa and honey, and it's really really nice. So that's why I tend to focus on is making Middle Eastern food out of my or else I've got modern Jewish cooking, because in the Jewish faith you tend not to drink meat and milk because you can't mix milk and meat. You tend to have a lot of vegetarian options there as well. So they've got some great, and that's Middle Eastern as well. So I tend to choose Middle Eastern cooking for most of my flavour palette, and that's really how I cook. But I try when I'm writing recipes for. I used to write recipes, and I still write recipes for our newsletter, Victoria Park Allotment. I always try to choose recipes where spices are optional, because some people don't like them, but I'd really like them to try cooking with their vegetables, so they just don't let them rot, or they don't, they use them. So I always try and do recipes where people can mix and, make things optional, so they can choose if they do want to add spices or they don't want to add spices. Because I know some of the people on my allotments anyway would try the recipes, really enjoy the recipes, but it's because they can pick and choose what they add to them. And that's really important to me, that people do have options in terms of what they do. So that's all I can add, really.
Yeah. What's your particular favourite then for the borlottis?
Bolotti is my favorite one. Is an adaptation of a Turkish recipe, which is basically you take onions, you take onions, and you take tomatoes, and you take courgettes if you've got them, because that's quite a nice bulking agent, and then you mix in smoked paprika, which is great, because I like that it's got a bit of better taste, especially with vegetables, than just paprika. Paprika is great on its own with meat, but if you're just doing vegetables, smoked paprika is great. Cumin, and also ground coriander, and a little touch of cinnamon, just a tiny touch of cinnamon, which is a bit Middle Eastern, but you can obviously take an option on that if you don't really want it. And then I mix that in with the vegetables, and then I put the beans on top, and then I have a vegetable stock that goes with that. And then we eat that with actually sort of flatbread or rice. And that is actually quite a common dish with us. And it's what's nice about that is when it's almost as nice cold as it is hot. So it becomes almost like a tapas dish when it's cold. So it's one of those dishes where you can make it, eat it hot, you can eat it as a main meal for the day. You could even add mushrooms to it, or or other vegetables to it, to have it for the day. Grate a bit of cheese on if it's hot, but then it's cold, and you can have it for lunch cold with flatbread. So it's kind of it's really good from that point of view. It gives you a both sides with beans, but the main thing is to add spices to the beans, because otherwise they can be a bit bland, which I find a bit, and I mean sometimes I've used French beans, haven't I? in that recipe as well. We got a glut of French beans, so I substitute the Belotti for the French. But the Belotti is great because the Belotti is really meaty. So unlike the butter beans, which the broad beans, which I found were a bit flat and a bit, you had to really skin them. If you get the Belotti beans really young, you don't have to skin them. So you've got a bean that doesn't need skinning, but B, it's really kind of meaty and substantial, which is really nice as something to eat. And unlike Monty Don said, you can't grow Belotti beans in the UK. Yes, you can. And nearly all my plot holders now are growing Belotti beans like mad because they seem to really love Glasgow. So, so Monty Don doesn't know what he's talking about because it grows like bilio.
Oh, we've had mixed results with our Borlottis, haven't we? Our plot is right down and it's very, very wet because it's of a hollow.
But ours is not that dry.
Well, we've had it good a couple of seasons. They've been really nice and they do cook well. I've got at the moment a load of bean seeds from my daughter that I want to try out because she's got these Carter beans, which are a bit like the Borlotti but smaller.
Yeah,
and she
and
said
cannelloni
is nicely, and they didn't have a thick skin.
Yeah, because that's the main thing, is to grow something that hasn't got a thick. Because I think that's what puts people off beans, is because they grow big broad beans and they get really big. And I know some people love them, but a lot of people then go, oh, but I've got to skin. And you say, well, actually, did you skin them? And they say, oh no. And then of course they say, oh well, it's really tough. And you feel like going, no, it's not tough. You just got to skin them. You've got to make sure you take the skins off them before you cook with them, because otherwise that does get tough. Yeah.
No, because I tend to feel with broad beans, you need to actually take them when they're very young.
Yeah, very young, or else if they're older, parboil them for about literally a few minutes so the skins are loose. Take the skins off, and then tip them into your main dish, and they're really good. But it's just a bit fiddly, so I prefer Belotti simply because they're less fiddly.
No, Belottis are nice. Yeah, Christine.
Jenny grows fava beans.
Oh, great.
There is the pain of skinning them. Jenny doesn't always do it. I tend to do it, but I use those fava beans very much in the way you're talking about using the Belotti beans. I mean, they're in everything, basically. You know?
And they're really good if you want to beef up like say a chicken dish where you haven't got much chicken. It's really good. Beans are fantastic like that because they really beef things up and they make something look quite exotic. Even when it isn't.
Well, the other day there we had dried peas and we had dried fava beans, so I soaked both of those and I made it into a pea and fava bean dip, and it worked out
nice.
Fava beans haven't got an attractive colour. It's kind of, isn't it, Jenny? It's kind of bland and or brown.
Yeah, it's not particularly, they're not as thick-skinned as the broad beans, but you still need to put a little bit of bicarb in, isn't it?
Yeah, I always do.
To soften it up. I tried growing the big white butter beans in the polytunnel, but they really didn't take to being in there. They did move forward, but they didn't really like it. So I'm going to try these Carter beans, and the other one she's given me is Trail of Tears, which is a little black bean. She says really nicely. So I don't know whether they'll do up here because obviously she's down south. Yeah, that's a bit better. But it's interesting that, as you say, you're getting quite good results where you are.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and it's really funny because it's the most, literally everybody who's tried them has had really great success with them. I mean, literally they produce vast quantities. And I don't know quite why, but it's really successful.
No, we had one year where we had lots and lots of lovely pods, but they didn't actually get fertilized, so the beans never developed.
Oh no, and that's not a problem. That is really not a problem with us.
Yeah.
I've got a freezer full of them, so if anybody wants a bag of frozen
Belottis, you've got them.
Like fava beans, yes.
Wow.